Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Homeowner insurance companies are leaving California and consumer advocates want answers. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Consumer Watchdog is calling on the state's attorney general to investigate the recent trend. KPBS reporter John Carroll says a recording of an insurance company lobbyist is at the heart of the matter.
So we're trying to deal with this.
Jamie Court was on a Southwest Airlines flight last week between LA and Sacramento when he heard a man across the aisle talking about moving a bill through the legislature in the last days of its current session. Court works for the group Consumer Watchdog. He didn't recognize the man, but his traveling partner did. The man across the aisle was Michael Gunning, Chief Strategy Officer for Lighthouse Public Affairs, a group that lobbies for insurance companies.
He was talking in person to a flight attendant, and I heard him. I heard other things that were actually more incendiary before I started taping. Like he said, oh, it's the end of session. I get paid for these last-minute surprises. I didn't get that on tape. But what I did get on tape was him saying,
So State Farm is not writing in all states a while ago. Yeah. Farmers said $12,000 a year.
This was all to surprise the public and surprise the lawmakers and do a last-minute job. And he invoked the idea that these companies were pulling out in sequence as a way of pressuring the deal.
In fact, as KPBS has been reporting for months now, several insurance companies have stopped selling homeowner policies in California, while others have placed restrictions on the policies they sell. The companies have cited the high cost of insuring homeowners who live in areas prone to wildfire. In their request to State Attorney General Rob Bonta for an investigation, Consumer Watchdog says insurance companies and their lobbyists are illegally colluding to coordinate an exit from the state. If true, such collusion would violate state and federal antitrust laws.
So we believe that constitutes price fixing. If a company is pulling out of a market that they're profiting well in, and they're doing it in concert with other companies to jack up premiums, isn't that price fixing?
So we're trying to deal with this.
We reached out to Michael Gunning and the company he works for. We heard back from a partner in the firm who provided a statement that says, in part, the urgency is undeniable. Californians deserve solutions that address these issues. Our team works tirelessly, even answering questions from flight attendants about what we do, advocating for our clients and communities. AG Rob Bonta's office says they're aware of Consumer Watchdog's request, but they say they're unable to comment on it, including confirming or denying a potential or ongoing investigation. John Carroll, KPBS News.
The warm-up continues, especially away from the coast, some of the interior valleys into the deserts as we work our way into Thursday. Temperatures now approaching 90 degrees around Ramona, back into the triple digits toward Borrego Springs. Still into the mid-70s, though, around Oceanside and Chula Vista. The question is, will the heat continue as we work our way into the upcoming weekend? I'll let you know coming up a little bit later on.
An update to the Fat Leonard scandal. Today, 4 former U.S. Navy officers had their convictions on bribery, fraud, and conspiracy overturned. They were convicted of accepting bribes from foreign defense contractor Leonard Francis, known as Fat Leonard. But defense attorneys alleged that prosecutors withheld evidence and prepped witnesses to provide false testimony. And today, a judge accepted plea agreements on misdemeanor charges and vacated the officers' felonies. They were sentenced to no prison time and $100 fines. The Escondido City Council recently decided to pull funding from a long-running homeless shelter in the city. As KPBS reporter Alexander Wynn explains, concerns were raised that the shelter was serving more than just Escondido residents.
We were very surprised.
That was the feeling when Interfaith Community Services CEO Greg Angel found out Escondido won't be funding Haven House this year. It's the only full-service, low-barrier homeless shelter in the city.
The Haven House shelter is the only shelter of its kind helping general population unsheltered in Escondido get off the street. So we were surprised to see it not funded.
The city council made the decision last month. Angel says the city expressed concerns about the population Haven House serves.
One of the concerns they shared is that our shelter was not serving a high enough portion of people from Escondido. We've seen more than 60% of our residents here who they became homeless here in Escondido.
According to Interfaith's internal data, more than 60% of residents at Haven House are Escondido residents. Haven House was expected to receive $50,000 from Escondido, roughly the same amount it has received in the past decade. At the meeting, former Haven House residents spoke in support of the shelter.
Good evening, council members and Mr. Mayor.
Holly Herring was one of them. She left home as a teenager because she felt unsafe there.
I didn't leave my home because I had an addiction or all of these problems. I gained them after I left. The Haven House shelter is the only kind of shelter I would have been welcomed in.
While $50,000 is a small part of the shelter's budget, it speaks to the larger issue that funding for homeless services is dwindling, Angel says.
I think the community's fed up and the community's mortified at the amount of people who are on our streets. And sometimes community members and local government think that the solutions to that are actually part of the problem.
Haven House will host a community meeting Friday to discuss some of the misconceptions as well as the loss of funding. Escondido Mayor Dean White has yet to respond to a request for comment from KPBS. Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
Many parents are struggling to find and afford childcare, and now that search could get even harder. Emergency child care funds set up during the pandemic are set to expire this month. KPBS reporter Tanya Thorne explains what that could mean for parents and for providers.
Federal emergency funding helped keep the child care industry from collapsing during the pandemic as parents returned to work and providers needed to cover expenses. The $24 billion Child Care Stabilization Program passed as part of the American Rescue Plan Act in 2021. It gave funding to more than 200,000 child care programs across America, a quarter of them in California. Now, those funds are set to expire by the end of this month. That could mean more staffing shortages and higher cost for care.
Fast forward to what's going to happen after this is that number is going to increase. And we've been working to decrease it, and this will be an automatic, not just 2 steps back, but 5 steps back.
Arnulfo Manriquez is the CEO of MAC. His organization provides child development and early education programs in San Diego. He says many providers use the funds to increase their staff's pay and keep the care affordable for parents.
Even if the families are able to pay, or pay more from what they were paying from the subsidy, I don't know if the centers are going to be able to continue to pay better or those higher wages that they were able to pay with these funds.
He fears the loss of these funds could mean a rise in the already high child care costs for parents, as well as staffing shortages at a time when staffing is already short.
The most impacted from this expiration will be women of color and low-income households in the overall county of San Diego. And so it's basically going to put a bigger stress on the social services and the support systems here in San Diego.
Manriquez says a large percentage of the workers in the childcare industry are women, and 80% of them are women of color, making an average of $14 to $15 an hour. Child Care Aware of America is a nonprofit organization that advocates for policies that improve child care.
I'm happy to say we are seeing some bright spots around the country and some states that have really stepped up.
Susan Gale Perry is the CEO. She says many states have started to invest more in childcare outside the federal funds.
We need to come to terms with what the fair share is for families to pay, for businesses and communities to invest, and really in public, state and federal dollars to invest in childcare to really get to a sustainable childcare model that really supports all families in the way that they need.
She says the Senate has proposed higher levels of funding in the next budget and hopes negotiations prevail in order to stabilize the childcare industry across the U.S. Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
And we have a special page on our website for parents. The KPBS Parents Hub is a one-stop shop for news, information, and resources, and it's tailored to those with children under the age of 12. You can check it out at kpbs.org/parenting. Gas prices around the country remain stubbornly high. Traditionally, they begin to drop after Labor Day, but so far that is not the case. Jasmine Viel talked with some drivers in California, including some who may be willing to ditch their gas-powered cars and switch to an electric vehicle.
Charging up. I'm super happy. I haven't seen a gas station in about 3 years.
Versus filling up.
Oh, yes. Hi.
Drivers of gas-powered cars aren't feeling as happy behind the wheel these days with gas prices that don't seem to be easing up. In LA and Orange County, a regular gallon of gas is up more than 25 cents from a month ago.
It's been rough, especially when you have kids and you're driving around everywhere from city to city.
So it went over 100, like I said.
And you've probably noticed if you're filling up with gas, AAA says gas prices are up more than 3 cents per gallon here in LA over just the last week, more than 4 cents per gallon in Orange County.
It was the most expensive Labor Day ever to hit the road across California.
Patrick DeHaan with Gas Buddy says refinery issues have caused the state's gasoline production to drop, driving up prices.
It's been a pretty rough summer for refineries hit with record-setting temperatures. And in Southern California also, the hurricane, which essentially slowed down operations, led to some interruptions in refining.
So as Southern Californians face yet again another steep climb in gas prices, business experts say people with EVs in the state benefit even more, where the cost of electricity is usually quite a bit below that of gasoline. Edwin Isaac says he pays just $10 for a full charge on his Chevy Volt, which can get him almost 200 miles. It was free through the city of Pasadena up until 3 weeks ago.
For almost 1 year, I had free charging. So the only thing that I had to pay for was the parking.
For those still filling up, DeHaan says prices will come down as the demand for gas usually drops in the fall and much of the nation transitions to the cheaper winter blend. That usually happens in October here in Southern California.
If things go well, by the end of the year, the average price for a gallon of gasoline in LA could again be back below the $5 gallon mark.
These gas prices are still down about $1 from a record high last October, but it has many rethinking what they drive.
I think it's time to switch.
You're almost convinced.
Yeah, I'm convinced by that, absolutely, because who could maintain this?
Jasmine Viel reporting. This is the third year in a row gas prices have hit record highs for Labor Day. In San Diego County, the price of regular gas is $5.41, and that is up 2.5 cents from yesterday and the highest amount since November 16th. A San Bernardino County judge put a temporary stop to a school district's policy requiring parents to be notified if their children change their gender identifications or pronouns. California Attorney General Rob Bonta had sued Chino Valley Unified School District. Bonta argued the policy violates students' civil rights, while Chino Valley officials say it seeks to involve parents to provide support. Other districts in Southern California are also considering similar parental notification policies. With school back in session, it's not just parents spending more money on school supplies. Reports are showing teachers are also digging deeper to meet their classroom needs out of pocket. Melissa Rainey has a look at the impact that has created.
First of all, let's stand up.
This back-to-school season, more than 90% of teachers are spending more of their own money on classroom supplies. That's according to the National Education Association, which is the largest teachers union in the U.S. It estimates that during the 2023-2024 academic year, teachers will spend $800 or more out of pocket.
And so for teachers, that's roughly 1 to 2 paychecks every school year that they're spending on buying supplies and stepping into the gap for these students.
And inflation is making it harder for teachers to stretch those dollars. Most school supplies have jumped in price, with the cost of crayons, pens, and pencils up nearly 19% year over year. A separate report by Study.com found that nearly 70% of teachers cited persistent inflation as having a noticeable impact on their ability to afford supplies on their own this year.
When notebooks are on sale at Target, and I'd go buy a whole bunch of them, so I'd have them, so when a kid needed it, I just went to the stash that I bought.
And it comes at a time when more teachers are quitting their jobs, citing low salaries and other concerns, which is worsening an ongoing teacher shortage in the U.S. In February 2023, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, there were nearly 150,000 more openings in public education than there were hires.
With the high cost of inflation and prices, et cetera, teachers are concerned. And we're seeing all across the U.S. a demand for core essential school supplies.
For Consumer Watch, I'm Melissa Rainey.
Artificial intelligence has been applied to lots of fields, including wildfire protection. UC San Diego and its Supercomputer Center have just improved their wildfire monitoring program called SmokyNet. But KPBS SciTech reporter Thomas Fudge says this AI system still has a lot to learn.
When you're trying to prevent a wildfire from getting dangerous, you need to spot it quickly and precisely. Now, there's the old way of spotting fires.
Currently, wildfires are being detected by fire lookouts, who are human experts, right, who are trained to spot fires by looking at camera feeds or patrolling on the ground or in vehicles. And wildfires are also reported through 911 calls from residents and passersby.
The problem is that you can miss fires and take too long to see them. That's why Mai Nguyen and her colleagues at UCSD created SmokyNet. It's a computer program that uses artificial intelligence to spot and report fires 24/7. Since its beginning, the system has been linked to about 100 cameras around San Diego County. They are part of a wireless surveillance system called HP-REN. Now, Nguyen says SmokyNet is also mining satellite detection images and figuring in weather data, which tells you how dry and windy it is. She said the speed of detection has improved.
It went from about 5 minutes with just baseline, with just the camera data, to a little bit more than 4 minutes.
But what about precision? If SmokyNet said there is a fire in the backcountry, is there really a fire?
If you talk about precision, it is about 88%. That means that about 12% of the predictions are false alarms.
In addition to those false positives, keep in mind that SmokyNet was also missing about 30% of the fires that actually occurred. With fire detection, there's no technological silver bullet because smoke caught on camera is still mistakable to people and to computers.
Smoke is actually very difficult. It can be very transparent. It can be amorphous, right? It has no border, no clear border. It can change shape.
Suzanne Leininger is the Intel specialist with San Diego Cal Fire, and she's been working with a similar AI system called Alert California. She has seen the false positives.
It could be like mid-level clouds that cast shadows over the landscape. So that can be the kind of, and so it can just detect something moving, and so it thinks that a smoke column is going up.
But Alert California AI has spotted fires that would otherwise have been missed. She gives one example of a recent fire in the Laguna Mountain area that the technology caught right away.
It was in the middle of the night, so dark, people are sleeping, it's a remote area, so there weren't a lot of people around anyway. There was a detection that occurred and South Ops got notified and South Ops called us, and we looked at the cameras. There was a response, and they were able to keep the fire very small.
Artificial intelligence is a computer program that can learn from its mistakes, and Leininger says false positives are pointed out to help teach the system to detect smoke. But for now, the only thing that can determine if a fire has begun is a human. Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
As we go throughout the next couple of days, the warmth will be persisting. In fact, a warming trend coming up as we go into Thursday and also into Friday. Noticeably less cloudiness, low cloudiness, and also some of the morning fog here into the interior valleys. Question is, what about the weekend? We'll highlight that coming up here in just a little bit. As we work our way into the overnight, we'll see temperatures slipping back down into the 60s. Still looking at that ribbon of fog and low clouds along the shoreline. 63 toward Chula Vista. Mount Laguna dropping briefly down into the upper 50s, and Borrego Springs down to 71. Ramona falling into the mid-50s. Let's go through time again. You could see the low clouds not as common. Again, as we work our way throughout to even Thursday morning, quite a bit of sunshine as we head in toward the afternoon and into the evening. And we will see temperatures a little bit higher, at least a few to several degrees higher than we experienced earlier on this afternoon. Back in the 70s around Mount Laguna, even some triple digits returning for Borrego Springs. All right, as we work our way down the road here at the coast, even look here, we're going to see those temperatures climbing up into the 80s. Notably, more sunshine as we work our way into the weekend. Overnight low temperatures falling off into the 60s. Over some of the interior valleys, looking to see that heat peaking as we go from Saturday into Sunday. Ample sunshine expected heading into your Saturday afternoon. Thursday's high temperature at 84, and these overnight lows also climbing through the 60s. Into the mountainous terrain we go. We're also going to be looking at some 70s over the course of the next couple of days. Could see a little bit cooler air trying to shift its way in, heading in toward the latter half of the weekend. And for the deserts, temperatures on the rise here, going from Thursday into Saturday. Temperatures approaching 110 degrees. The overnight low all the way up to near 80 degrees. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Justin Popping.
Film Out launches its 23rd year as San Diego's LGBTQ Film Festival. The 4-day event kicks off tomorrow night at the San Diego Natural History Museum and then moves to the Museum of Photographic Arts. KPBS Arts reporter Beth Accomando has this preview.
We may live in the 21st century, but it can feel like the dark ages in terms of attitudes about the LGBTQ community.
Society is still kind of like puts us in boxes. Still, society doesn't really give us the chance to live freely, because there are, I mean, look at what's going on in America. I mean, the laws that are being presented, these things really affect your soul, your whole being.
To challenge this surge of anti-drag and anti-trans laws, Film Out celebrates the broad spectrum of the LGBTQ plus community through movies. Its stated mission is to enlighten, educate, and entertain through the exhibition of LGBTQ-themed films.
Wait, is this your first kiss?
And once again, the festival delivers on its mission with films that invite us into the world of drag performers, that tell personal stories about identity.
I had to get really comfortable being the only person of color and only Black woman in a lot of the spaces that I was moving through in San Diego.
And look at how a hate crime can impact a community. Nitzan Galady's In Bed reflects real violence that occurs in Israel and what happens when the perpetrator of a hate crime is not caught.
Started to think about what happens if he's someone that when you go and order a coffee, he's the one who actually served the coffee. And maybe he's someone I'm opening the door for him for a date.
And it's that idea that starts to unnerve the main character in his film.
I think that triggers his paranoia, and it triggers everything within him. His self-hate, his fear from meeting, even interacting with other people.
The film is also about the need for love, even against a backdrop of hate and violence. Queer filmmaker Sav Rogers documents a very personal tale of discovery that began when he saw the Kevin Smith movie, Chasing Amy.
Holden McNeil was set in his ways, but then she showed up.
You know, my life changed from there, because not only was I so moved by the grand romanticism in Kevin's work, but also I saw queer people, you know, getting to have full realized lives for the first time in my life in this like cinematic foray into that. Chasing Amy was that lightning rod for me, but also a life raft when I really needed it, struggling in school as a kid, as a queer kid who everybody else figured out was queer before I did.
Now Rogers explores how Chasing Amy fits into a bigger social context in his documentary, Chasing Amy.
From the outset, I always thought that there was something special there about the story of Chasing Amy and the intersection with the LGBTQ community.
Say two, take one. Parker.
Do you understand why I love this movie so much?
No. The film begins as a fan doc about Rogers' love for Smith's work. It then morphs into a story about his changing relationship to that movie, prompted in part by his interview with actress Joey Lauren Adams.
The movie is amazing, but whatever moved you is a dark side, too.
The process of making the film pushed Rogers in ways he never expected.
As a filmmaker, the painful parts were exploring my transition because, as you can imagine, I was not terribly interested in preserving a part of myself that I wish that people generally wouldn't remember.
Rogers' ability to pivot as a director and see that his documentary needed to be something different than what he had originally imagined is just one reason why Chasing Amy is such a fresh, inspiring film. And a final pair of recommendations. San Diego Latino Film Festival is co-presenting Trace of Your Lips from Mexico on Saturday. Set during the pandemic, it's a dark, explicit, and claustrophobic film. Then, Sunday's closing night film, Golden Delicious, will be co-presented by San Diego Asian Film Festival. It focuses on a high school senior who tries to meet everyone's expectations while ignoring his own. These are just a few of the offerings at this year's Film Out, but I hope they entice you to seek out more. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
And here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. There's an overflow of surrendered pets at the nation's animal shelters. On NPR's Morning Edition, how the housing crisis and natural disasters are playing a role. And KPBS Midday Edition is highlighting all the best in arts and culture with the Weekend Roundup. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.